Read Matthew 7:24 through 27. Therefore, everyone who hears these words of mine and acts on them may be compared to a wise man who built his house on the rock. And the rain fell, and the floods came, and the winds blew and slammed against that house, and yet it did not fall, for it had been founded on the rock. Everyone who hears these words of mine and does not act on them will be like the foolish man who built his house on the sand. The rain fell, and the floods came, and the winds blew and slammed against that house, and it fell, and great was its fall.
It is so good to be with you all this morning. Thank you for being here and joining us in worship. Thanks to John for leading us in those songs and all who have helped thus far this morning. It's so good to be together each and every week. In the greatest sermon ever preached, in Matthew chapters 5 through 7, Jesus in the Sermon on the Mount, he spent time laying out a pattern for his kingdom, a pattern for the type of life that his people were going to live, what his kingdom was going to be governed by, so to speak. And we think about governing documents for nations and for kingdoms, and we might think about something like the Constitution within the United States. Well, that's essentially what the Sermon on the Mount is for everybody who wants to be a follower of Jesus, is that this is the living standard of our life, that this is who we are called to be and how we're supposed to arrange our lives. And at the end of this sermon, that he had spent so much time doing a lot of things. One, he gave some new teaching. He gave some challenging teaching, and he also challenged some things that people had been taught that weren't really all that good. They weren't all that accurate. And at the end of that sermon is the passage that Mike just read for us, where he gives this comparative story of a wise man and a foolish man. And we know this passage well, and we teach our kids the song about the wise man building his house upon the rock. But what I want us to take note of this morning is that song and this passage has a meaning, and its meaning is all tied to this one sermon. That Jesus said, if you want to be like the wise man who built his house upon the rock, then take these words, the words of this sermon that he was concluding, and he says, and do this. If you follow what he had just preached in Matthew chapters 5 through 7, then you'll be that wise man with your house on a rock. But if you ignore the lessons that are found there in Matthew 5 through 7, then you're going to be that foolish man whose house is built on the sand. This month, the month of May, we're going to spend our Sundays talking about our families, talking about our own homes, and wanting to be those houses that are on the rock, not just for us as individuals, but for us as families, us as husband and wife and parents and children and siblings. We have so many pressures that face the family unit today, our schedule being chief among them. Everybody's so busy all the time. We as humans all face temptation to sin, and when we allow sin within our life, it affects our home, it affects our families. We have pressure to keep up with societal norms, pursuing more, fitting in with everybody around us. We have a lot of pressures on our home. And so what I want to do this morning is just take a few moments to briefly survey the wisdom that Jesus had preached in Matthew 5 through 7 and apply that to our homes. That if we were to take what Jesus had just said and take it to heart and apply this in a very practical way to our families, how can we build families that last, marriages that last, parents that produce faithful children? What wisdom do we have from Jesus here in Matthew chapters 5 through 7? So we're going to take a brief survey this morning, and I want to highlight 6 brief things for us to talk about this morning. I know a lot of sermons have 3. This isn't going to be twice as long. We're going to move pretty quickly, but I want to give you 6 observations about what houses built on the rock might look like based off of what Jesus said in Matthew chapters 5 through 7. And the first observation that I want us to make is that houses that are built on the rock are houses that have parents who teach their children the commands and the ways of God. Whenever we go backwards into this sermon in Matthew chapter 5, verse 19, Jesus had this to say. He would say, therefore, whoever relaxes one of the least of these commandments and teaches others to do the same will be called least in the kingdom of heaven. But whoever does them and teaches them will be called great in the kingdom of heaven. Jesus was comparing and contrasting those who would maybe look at a command or a regulation of God and say, well, this is one of those lesser commands. It's not as important, and so I'm going to relax that, and I'm going to teach others that it's okay to ignore that. And Jesus said those types of people, they're going to be least in the kingdom, but the greatest are going to be the ones who pay attention even to the details of the law in their own life, and they teach others how to do it. Now, in the context of this particular sermon, Jesus is talking about the Old Covenant. The Old Covenant that ancient Israel was under until all was fulfilled in Jesus. And we know that today, as Christians, we don't have the 600 plus commands in the Old Testament that we're supposed to follow, but we certainly still have things that God expects of us. And if we want to build our homes to where we have strong families that are built on the rock, then we got to be people who teach our children to follow God, and we do that with a couple of things. One, we do that with our own lives. We can't lead someone where we're not going, and we can't teach somebody something that we don't know. And so parents with children at home, if we want our children to come to know God, we're the ones that have to teach them about God. We're the ones that have to model that within our life of who our priority is and what it is that matters the most to us. We got to teach with our own lives and also teach with our words. Whenever my kids were real young, we gave them these vitamins every day, these gummy vitamins, and they actually liked them. They tasted good, and in theory, they're supposed to have some nutritiousness to them. And I don't know if they did, but our kids, they would look forward to them, and they would eat them every day. They have some other supplements that they take now, and they don't like them as much. They're not chewy and taste good, but we understand what that's like to give our kids, or even ourselves, vitamins, supplements, because we might have a deficiency, and we know that we're not getting what we need physically from just the food that we eat, and so we supplement our diet. But if you're to take your child and you only give them the supplement, and you don't feed them throughout the day, that child's not going to be very healthy. And in a very real sense, that's what many Christian homes do with the spiritual education of their kids, is that we bring them to church on Sundays and on Wednesdays and youth events, and what is meant to be a supplement to their faith, the things that we do here, ends up being the only thing that they're taking in. And so if our kids aren't eating, so to speak, at home, learning from us as parents, it's the equivalent of just giving our kid a vitamin and not giving them food. If we want to be people who build houses that are firm on the rock, then we as parents need to take our job seriously of being those who teach our children more about God than anyone else does, than more than what the preacher does or their Bible class teacher. That's our job, to teach our kids what it means to follow God and teaching them to do the very same thing. Number two, if we want to have homes and families that are built on the rock, we need to have spouses that are faithful, but not just faithful, faithful from the heart. Here in this same sermon, Jesus had this to say. He would say, "You have heard that it was said, 'You shall not commit adultery,' but I say to you, that everyone who looks at a woman with lustful intent has already committed adultery with her in his heart. If your right eye causes you to sin, tear it out and throw it away. For it is better that you lose one of your members than for your whole body to be thrown into hell." Houses that are built on sand are the houses that are only concerned with what other people see on the surface. And they're not so much concerned with what's going on within their own heart, what's going on within their own mind. Faithfulness in marriage is so much deeper than just physical acts. But what's going on within the mind? What's going on within our heart? Because we serve a God who doesn't just care about what we do, but also about what we think. And we live in a time where temptation to think things that we should not is everywhere around us. We can be people who have kept ourselves physically faithful to our spouse. But if we welcome things into our mind through our phones, computers, televisions, books that we read, places that we go, then our house and our marriage is built on sand. Sometimes the very best thing that you can do for your family is make a sacrifice of taking that source of your temptation and cutting it out of your life. Even if that means needing to get a new job, even if that means saying, I'm not going to have a smartphone, even if that means you fill in the blank, you know what that means for you, but sometimes the best thing you can do for your family is to cut something out of your life and to throw it away. Houses that are built on the rock have deep levels of trust between husband and wife that go beyond what somebody's doing, but even trusting what's going on within their mind and what's going on within their heart. Number 3, houses that are built on the rock are houses that are filled with people who go the extra mile for others within their home. I want to see a show of hands this morning. How many of you, whenever you go to the store and you buy a gallon of milk and they ring it up for you, you say, I would like to pay you more than that? Nobody? That's ridiculous, right? Why would anybody do that? In fact, whenever we see the price of a gallon of milk, we say, can you cut it in half, right? We don't enjoy the idea of paying more than something's worth, but in a sense, that's exactly what we're called to do as people. Not that you need to go and give the grocery store more money for your gallon of milk, but that we treat people better than what they deserve and better than what is required out of us. That seems crazy when we put it in financial terms, but that's exactly who God calls us to be as people. If we want to be people who are building lives that are built on the rock. Jesus would say in Matthew 5:40 through 41, and if anyone would sue you and take your tunic, let him have your cloak as well. And if anyone forces you to go 1 mile, then go with him 2. But we have a tendency to want to give people, in our estimation, what it is that they deserve. We want to withhold something if they haven't earned it. Just one real-world common example that I've heard many times, and maybe you have as well, this type of discussion comes up a lot when people are eating out at a restaurant, and maybe their server isn't very attentive, or they forget their order, or something else happens that we don't like, and maybe you'll hear the comment, well, that's coming out of their tip. What would happen if we just gave them a good tip anyways? Well, they didn't earn it. There's a lot of things I didn't earn that my God has done for me. And that's the principle of what Jesus says his people are going to be like. That we're going to be people who treat others better than they have ever deserved from us. And whenever we think about that in terms of our families, in terms of our home, no doubt there are times that we may not feel like somebody within our home deserves something extra special from us today. But church, aren't we thankful that God doesn't give us what we deserve? We got to be people who are willing to do the exact same thing for others that's been done for us through Jesus. It's a reflection of the love that God has given to us, that followers of Christ treat people better than they deserve. Don't wait on your spouse or child or sibling or parent to deserve some special behavior before you give it to them. Kids, if you want to blow your parents' mind, the next time you're asked to do a chore, do more than what they've asked you to do. They won't even know what to do with it. If they ask you to clean the living room, and you clean the living room and the bathroom, and you take out the trash, they're going to worry that there's something wrong. But then they're going to appreciate it more than you could possibly know. Do more than what you're expected to do. Be the person who goes the extra mile for those within your home. Number 4, if we want to have families and homes that are built on the rock, we have to be people that are quick to forgive. That are so quick to forgive wrongs that have been done to us. In Matthew chapter 6, verse 14 through 15, Jesus says, for if you forgive others their trespasses, your heavenly Father will also forgive you. But if you do not forgive others their trespasses, neither will your Father forgive your trespasses. This is a powerful passage where Jesus teaches that forgiving other people, it does 2 things for us. One is that it heals our relationships with one another, but it also allows us to be forgiven by God. You remember the story, the parable of the unforgiving servant, where there's this servant that was racked up so much debt he'd never be able to pay it off. That's us in our relationship with God. And he goes to his master, and his master grants him forgiveness, and he wipes that slate clean. That's what God has done with us, with our sin, through Jesus. But then that servant who had just been forgiven, he goes and he finds somebody who owes him a small amount, and he threatens him, and he abuses him, and he holds him accountable for it. And then that first master hears what this forgiven servant has done, and he says, forget that, you're going into prison. That's what Jesus is saying. If we want to have that forgiveness of God in our lives for our wrongdoings, we've got to be people who are quick to forgive of other people. Our walk with Jesus is not right if we don't forgive other people. So I want us to think just real practically for a moment about within our own homes, within our families. I'm going to go out on a limb and assume that somebody in your family at some point has done something to upset you. If you're breathing, that's probably true for you. That's happened at some point in your life. It's been said that in every marriage that has lasted for decades, it's because those two people are great forgivers. It's not because they have a perfect relationship in that they're perfect spouses. They're great forgivers, great at looking past the wrongs that have been done. Because marriages that keep a record of wrong are filled with tension. Forgiveness is essential to have a great marriage for good parent-child relationships. Those of us who have kids at home, we know that there are times that our kids are just the most precious things in the world. And then there's the other 23 hours of the day. And sometimes we struggle with that. And forgiveness needs to be quick to happen, but to tell our kids something that may be shocking to them, sometimes your parents aren't perfect, and they need your forgiveness as well. Unless you're my kids, that doesn't apply. But within our homes, if we want to be homes that are built on the rock, we have to be people that being quick to forgive is just in our nature. It's not something somebody has to beg us for. It's not something that we have to spend a long time thinking about if we're going to let something go. We just are people who let it go. We are people who forgive because that's what God has done for us. If your home is not a forgiving home, then your home is built on sand. Number 5, for us to have houses that are built on the rock, we need to be people, homes, and families that understand we serve one master. One master and one master only. This is perhaps the most important lesson out of all of these that we're talking about this morning, out of this sermon as it relates to having faithful homes, is the understanding that we have one master. Jesus would say in Matthew 6, no one can serve two masters, for either he will hate the one and love the other, or he'll be devoted to one and despise the other. You cannot serve God and money. If in your home you have multiple masters, it's a home that's built on sand. For some, their second master that they try to serve is exactly the one Jesus is speaking of. Their master is money. That they want to work more so they can accumulate more and they can spend more. And the results of achieving that sometimes pull us away from what it is that we need to be. In Proverbs 13:25, it says, the righteous has enough to satisfy his appetite, but the belly of the wicked suffers want. I want you to sit with that proverb for a moment. What the Bible is not saying is that the righteous will work hard enough so that they can accumulate enough. But rather, those who are righteous are those who recognize that they already have enough. That their life is not about needing to get better and needing more and needing to improve. But those who are righteous before God are those who already understand that in this moment, as I am, God has given me enough. It's the heart of those who are wicked that are just always wanting more. I need a bigger house. I need a better car. I need better vacations. I want, you fill in the blank. I need. That's the heart of the wicked. The righteous says, I have enough as I am. Many people struggle with serving that master, the master of money, but we also have many other masters that attack our homes. For some, their second master is their child, is their children. because I want my kids to have the best life. My kids are number one. And I want them to have the best home and the best room and the best clothes and the best school, the best coach, the nicest vacations, the best you fill in the blank. And so everything is about the child. For some, their second master may be sports. You know, I'm gonna be there and I'm gonna serve the church at this event unless my Rams are on TV, and then I'm out. I'm gonna go watch them play. For some, their second master may be comfort or politics or country. Church, houses that are built on the rock are homes that every member of the family understands that we serve one master and none of us are that master. His name is Jesus. The houses on the rock have a clear master. His name is Jesus. Of course, we have responsibilities. We have jobs. We have school, work, things like that. And Jesus is not opposed to you going to school. He's not opposed to you working. He's not even opposed to fun and games and sports. But anytime we allow these other things to cause Jesus to take a back seat in our life, our home is built on sand. Houses that are built on the rock say we have one master. None of us are that master. And none of the things we're involved with are that master. We have one master, and his name is Jesus. And if there's ever a conflict between him and anything else, he wins every time. Houses built on the rock have one master. Number 6, and finally this morning, homes that are built on the rock are homes that practice the golden rule. Matthew 7 and verse 12, he would say, "So whatever you wish that others would do to you, do also to them, for this is the law and the prophets." We call this the golden rule because Jesus says this summarizes all of the law and the prophets. It is to treat others the way that we want to be treated. Whenever we think about our homes, our family, our spouses, our children, it's so important that we operate with this mentality because marriages are strengthened with this rule. It can be tempting for a spouse to not want to buy a nice gift or do an act of service or write an encouraging note because they don't do that for me. That's not the mindset that we have as a disciple of Jesus. Relationships between siblings are strengthened with this rule. It's so hard to learn when your brother or your sister has taken an extra turn with the game, or they made a mess and they blamed you for it, or they didn't do their job and now your job is harder. It can be so tempting to want to treat them the very same way. If you follow Jesus, you won't do that. You'll treat them the way that you want to be treated. But kids are not the only ones who struggle with that rule. All of us here, we do as well. And we can find ourselves in every relationship in a perpetual cycle of not treating one another well because we're waiting on them to deserve it. Disciples of Jesus are ones who break that cycle, and they treat the way they want to be treated. And so if within your home, within your own mindset, if you're constantly measuring whether or not something is fair or deserved, you're building your relationships on sand. Houses that are built on the rock don't treat one another that way, but they treat one another based off of how they want to be treated. We could spend a lot more time this morning looking at the wisdom from this sermon and then how it can apply within our relationships and within our home. But I want to ask you this morning to focus this week on the one area that you know you personally need to grow in. Maybe you're a parent and you know you haven't been speaking to your kids much about God and about His Word and teaching them. You've been relying on others to do that. This is the area you need to grow. Maybe it's a marriage that you're faithful physically, but maybe not with all of your heart. Or you're someone who struggles to go the extra mile, or you're holding resentment and bitterness within your heart. You're somebody that you feel as though your home has divided loyalties, that you have your life and you're trying to add Jesus into it, as opposed to building your life on Him and serving Him as your one master. You know where it is that you struggle. So my encouragement for you this week is to spend time focusing, praying, and seeking encouragement from your brothers and sisters in Christ on that area so that we can help you strengthen your home, strengthen your family so that it will last during the storms of this life. If we can help you this morning in your relationships and with your home, we invite you to come as together we stand and we sing this song of invitation.